The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
They told me to hit that harder than I thought I should. So thank you for joining us today. I am indeed Kathryn Lincoln. I serve as the chair of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, and I've been told I have 30 seconds because we want to get to these guys and gals as soon as possible. But I do want to say that my strongest hope and desire for this lecture series that we'll be working with this organization for the next decade or so is that we really make a difference. That's what I really want for this organization. Thank you.
So good afternoon. Let me try that again. Okay, there. And welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. Did I get that right, Dan? There we go. It's Tuesday, October 28th, and I'm George McCarthy, better known as Mac, president of the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. And I'm pleased to introduce the inaugural Kathryn J. Lincoln Forum. This new multi-year series is a partnership between the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy and the City Club. Our goal with these conversations and the engagement around them is to deeply examine the issues facing the region and the effective land use planning, ethical leadership, and inclusive community development more generally. Last week, Mayor Justin Bibb and Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne officially requested Congress take up the issue of closing Cleveland's lakefront airport, which I guess is going to be controversial. This comes on the heels of the agreement to close and demolish Cleveland's lakefront football stadium, which is probably more controversial, as the Browns build a new facility in nearby Brook Park. Though Clevelanders have talked about waterfront development for decades, it feels as though all of a sudden the city may have hundreds of acres of blank canvas for completely new lakefront development. And as I was telling the panelists at lunch, I think there's probably as many opinions about what we should do with the lakefront as there are people in the room. So we expect a vigorous discussion about this. This timing might be perfect. In 2023, the North Coast Master Plan was developed after numerous workshops, public forums, and community input. This summer, the project secured $960,000 from the Department of Transportation's BUILD program through a Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Now, the project has wrapped the planning phase and is firmly entering the next era. It's time to do the work and perhaps follow the lead of similar cities. Toledo, Seattle, and Pittsburgh have all had some success in activating space for the public good. Our conversation today invites experts from those peer cities that are further along in their own waterfront projects. What lessons can we learn? What was successful? What would they not do again? How can we be better prepared to get the job done and to get it done right? Here to answer those questions are Matthew Killam, Chief External Relations Officer of Metro Parks Toledo, Barbara Lee, Project Delivery Manager of Waterfront Seattle, Scott Skinner, Executive Director of the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation here in Cleveland, and Gavin White, Director of Planning and Projects of River Life Pittsburgh. Moderating the conversation is Zaria Johnson, reporter and producer of IdeaStream Public Media. A reminder for our live stream audience, if you have a question during the Q&A part of the forum, you can text it to 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the program. Now, members and friends of the City Club of Cleveland, please join me in welcoming Matthew, Barbara, Scott, and Gavin. And over to you now, Zaria.
Thank you guys. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to our conversation. I want to start by maybe just setting the scene. I know we've got a few different representatives from outside of Cleveland here with us. So Matt, maybe we can start with you. If you can just describe the history of waterfront access in Toledo, then we'll just go down the line. Where were you starting from, and what's it look like now?
Sure. Well, let me start off by saying that this is one of the best lit rooms I've ever been in my life. And this is what waterfront work does to you. I'm only 26 years old. So welcome to
You look great.
Welcome to the dawn. I do need that. Thank you. So to present ourselves as a city as saying that we have riverfront access is generous. The project that we're highlighting today is a byproduct of, and I'll wait for your surprise, a bunch of community leaders getting together and asking ourselves, what if tomorrow were different? Or what is the city we aspire to look more like? So some of the panelists here are quite literally case studies that we use to re-envision the space. So that downtown master plan highlighted several things, one of which was we had a 300-acre delta of green space comparatively to the cities we wanted to look and aspire to look or be. I work for a small park system, or certainly small at that time, so we're an unusual casted character here to lead a riverfront project. But I'm here to talk about that we've converted almost entirely industrial legacy along about a 6-mile strip into active green space. We've got only 25% of this $250 million project started, and with people in it. We'll be halfway done with construction by May of next year. We've seen 2 million people to our little town into that space. Again, this is on a former electrical plant and a iron ore production site. So there's a new kind of energy being built there. We're proud to say we're the vector of that. So 2 million visits, just give you some comparative stats here. Toledo's a town of about 270,000 people. I represent a county of about 420,000. So it is the epicenter of activity, and as opposed to thinking of either development or green space, what we found is it's truly hand in glove and the most effective in that way. So we're going to get on to many other things, many exciting panelists here, but we're a small town, we are your neighbor, but we envision to do bigger things and be different, and we started by asking ourselves, why not us?
Hey, thank you, everybody, and thank you for inviting me to Cleveland. I had a chance to tour around, and it's a beautiful city with tons of waterfront opportunities. I'm with the City of Seattle, Office of the Waterfront, and this year we just wrapped up our construction and opened up our waterfront park to Seattle and all our communities. What we started with was a double-decker arterial highway, the Alaskan Way viaduct, that separated our downtown and neighboring communities from our waterfront. That was our starting point, and our catalyst was the 2001 earthquake that damaged the viaduct as well as our seawall. So that set our path forward, and in the next 20 years, we came to a decision to remove that barrier, remove that viaduct, move the traffic underground to a deep bore tunnel, demolish the viaduct, and then our team started with the redevelopment of our waterfront. I see a lot of similarities with Cleveland. We had to maintain arterial roadway for freight. There's railroad tracks, and also the topography of along the waterfront, moving from shoreline at 0 elevation to over 100-foot verticality that we had to reconnect to bring our neighborhoods to the waterfront.
Yeah, so a lot of similarities as well. I don't have to explain the efforts to redevelop our downtown lakefront to folks in this room nearly as much. I've been in Cleveland for 8 years, and we're on the 3rd version of a lakefront master plan. Going back 50 to 60 years, we're on our 17th version of a lakefront master plan. People have been trying to do this collectively for over 100 years. And what we're doing now stands on the shoulders of everyone who's been trying to do that work as well. The reasons that the downtown lakefront site has not been developed, activated, are plentiful. There's obviously access. It's difficult to get to, even more difficult just to see. There are the challenges of infrastructure and bulkhead work. There are submerged land leases, which we can get into if anyone needs like a post-lunch nap or something. And of course, there's the challenge of political will and collaboration. We're in a place now where we are already addressing or have addressed many of those challenges. In just the last 18 months since I've run this organization, we have raised $150 million in federal and state grants, which is going to allow us to start construction in 2027 on the first phase of the North Coast Connector, which is a reimagining of the shoreway as it bisects downtown from our waterfront, and the construction of a pedestrian-only land bridge connecting our downtown, including our convention center, to our lakefront. We've started the development process. We've done a lot of the unsexy infrastructure and submerged land lease work to get this site ready for development. We're in the process of evaluating and selecting development partners that we expect to be able to announce by the end of the year. We've established the City of Cleveland's first new community authority, and the city has established a shore-to-core to shore TIF district, which are really important pieces of the puzzle to put together these complicated public-private financing partnerships. And we've started the North Coast Yard. Everything that I just described is a multiple year, in some cases decade-long project, and we didn't want to wait another decade for folks in Cleveland to be able to use their downtown lakefront. In just 2.5 months, we saw 25,000 unique visitors coming down to participate in roller skating rink Fridays with a DJ, basketball leagues, skateboarding competitions, and a whole bunch of other really fun activities. So the challenges are plentiful, but one thing that I really appreciate about the current administration, as well as the current sort of civic ecosystem, which includes you all, is that the difference between this version and the last 17 versions of a lakefront master plan is that this one has been laser focused on implementation and on execution. And that's why we are closer than ever and well on our way to finally realizing what our downtown lakefront should be, which is a driver of public, equitable access to the waterfront and a catalyst for economic development for the city and region.
Hi all, really happy to be here. First of all, I was born in Cleveland, so coming back, although
Welcome
I
back.
left for, thank you. It's great to be here. I did leave though when I was 2 years old to go to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is a town not unlike the cities who have already been discussed. We are famous for our 3 rivers. Some would argue it's a confluence of 2 rivers, but then we'd have to talk about whether Ohio is actually Allegheny, and that could get complicated here. So suffice it to say, we have a lot of waterfront. It is more, I would say, akin to a Cuyahoga than it is the Lake Erie or Pacific Ocean waterfronts that you all are talking about today. But still, that development is essential to our region. And it has happened over the years in fits and starts. So Point State Park is rather famous. It gets about 1 million visitors a year. It was built in the early 1970s. After that, there was a small riverfront park in 1980. And really, we didn't get under our feet until the sort of turn of the millennium at a point in which people really said, not just here and there, but everywhere across the riverfronts, we need to be thinking about connecting people to the water, and we need to turn from a sort of industry-only approach to our waterways to something that works for everyone. So River Life has been the steward of that vision for the last quarter century, and we, I think, have done a pretty good job at building that basic access into our infrastructure, though there are certainly gaps, and we can talk about those. We, I think, need to catch up on a lot of the work that these cities have been doing, in the sense that we have really passive spaces, and we haven't done a lot to activate them, to make them replete with programs and activities and concessions and other developments that make those spaces really desirable for families to stay, relax, enjoy a restroom, which is super essential.
It's a big deal.
And make these spaces that really become the glue for Pittsburgh's public realm.
So I wanted to ask about this point of learning from each other, collaborating with other cities, comparable cities. What does that look like in this work? Is this picking up a phone to ask each other about something you're working on, or is it more so looking at what Seattle's accomplished and figuring out how to apply that to Cleveland or Toledo or Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I can start. Sure. It is theft, it's simply, right? So unlike my business and potentially many of yours, your competitors want you to succeed, right? It's really in the park business. So Toledo, Ohio, again, is a comparatively small town and former industrial, former automotive hub, but we can do this well, and we're good at talking about what we are not as opposed to what we are. So we looked at places like downtown Chicago, right? They have an ice skating ribbon. We can't have an ice skating ribbon. Yeah, of course we can. We can put on a former electrical plant? Yeah, of course we can. We visited a park in downtown Denver, and they had a 40-foot tall ADA accessible play facility that was given by a radio legend when he passed away. We don't have any radio legends, at least to my knowledge, but we are the birding capital of the world, so 2 weeks out of the year, Toledo gets 6 billion little buggers flying over the top of us. So that is who we are, right? So we can't have a 40-foot tall ADA accessible play facility? Yeah. Ours isn't a radio microphone, it's a giant warbler. So what we are is a conservation agency. So what we want all of you, and this is now publicly broadcast, so it might be out, but we're a conservation agency. It's our job to dupe people into learning about the ecology of Northwest Ohio. And on top of that, we want to make sure that all the industries that support us are a little bit better at getting people to move here, to Toledo, making it a great place to live, work, and play. So it's a mixture of theft, it's a mixture of even conversations we've had today about things we would never do again, right? So it is asking your partners, tell us how to be more like you in the ways that are working, and I'll tell you what we did that we would never do again. So we are, again, a small town, but we were just recently, the NRPA gave us the Gold Medal Award, which you've won multiple times. Brian, I can see you holding your number, the 6. That's, he sends me an email regularly if I could come down and shine his trophies for him. But 5 years ago, don't clap for that park system, I'm a good park system. But 5 years ago, it was Toledo, Ohio, right? We were amongst 4 finalists, us, Dallas, Texas, I don't know if you heard of that sleepy little place, Mesa, Arizona, and Baton Rouge. We don't compete or compare to those cities, but we can if we highlight who we are as opposed to who we are not, and who we are is a great space for green and a great space for commerce and a great space to have fresh water access and a place to live, work, and play.
I mean, historically, waterfronts across the country have been used primarily for commerce. And that's not unique to Cleveland, that's not unique to any of these cities. And the sort of transition or the reimagining of looking at our waterfronts as accessible and drivers of economic development is relatively new. So there are a lot of cities across the country that we take lessons from. I'll put them in sort of 3 brackets. There's design, so you talk about playground features and amenities. There's financing, so figuring out how to actually pay for all of the non-revenue generating things that are really important to these developments. And then there's actually organizational structure. When Mayor Bibb first took office, one of the things that his team did was look at really complicated waterfront projects. Seattle was one of them, and understanding how to create the organizational structure, whether it's internal to a city, external, what a board makeup looks like, what all the partnerships look like, is just as important as determining what features you want in a playground or an amenity.
I'll just say, I mean, it's a real privilege to be here. I have actually had the opportunity to visit every one of our cities for learning experiences, with the exception of Toledo, so I'm coming next. It is essential to be able to get... Look, it's essential to be able to visit peer cities and cities to aspire to, like Seattle, to learn about what they've got going on, whether it's organizational structure. I went to Seattle to learn about a workforce development organization called the Seattle Conservation Corps and brought some of that back to Pittsburgh. I love seeing the amazing playscapes in some of these other towns. For learning and for getting to know other cities, I'm going to plug a couple of things. One from another city nearby, Detroit, where for their large Ralph C. Wilkin Park, they built a steering committee of community leaders, and they took those community leaders to other cities to learn about parks before they even began the design process. That's going to infuse that process with a lot more thought and learning than just giving it a go on your own, because it is an industry where we can learn from each other. And the other thing I'll plug, just because I just joined the board, is World Urban Parks. It's an excuse for me to travel internationally for work, but it is also truly an exciting experience when you can bring some of those things outside of the country back as well.
I just want to comment that the success of the Seattle waterfront is due to the sharing from the other cities and what we learned when we were kind of in your shoes a decade plus ago. We did tour other successful waterfronts on other cities and learned a lot and applied that to what we did. And I'm thankful for this opportunity to be in Cleveland to kind of share what we learned and keep passing it forward.
That's amazing. I want to talk a bit more about funding, and Scott, you already gave us a breakdown on what our funding for the North Coast project looks like right now. Sure. But I'm curious what funding sources you all turn to and continue to turn to in your work, and how state funding versus federal funding versus grant funding might impact the project timeline overall.
Well, I can speak to what Seattle did for funding. Our program did not have any federal funding, so that helped us probably move a little bit quicker, a little bit less process. Our funding was primarily city and state funding. We also did a local improvement district tax, so that contributed to the waterfront development, as well as there were philanthropic dollars from our Friends of the Waterfront that were committed to the capital asset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add there other than I think Seattle is unique in its ability to rely on those local dollars. So for our cities, federal resources are an important part of the equation for larger scale infrastructure projects. Determining how to make that project appear valuable at various administrations and to various administrations is a challenge for sure, but it's something that we continue to work toward. For us, it's wherever we can find a dollar, we will take it, right? It's federal, it's state, it's local, it's corporate, it's individual, it's foundations, it's creative tax financing, it's whatever we can do to make a project happen, and that it always includes all of those things if it's a project of scale.
We have a slightly different, although also really the same, right? So we asked the taxpayers of Lucas County to sort of front-end load our project. So we went on the ballot during COVID, if you can imagine that. And we did think about maybe taking a real hard stop on this potentially. It ended up passing to the tune of the mid-60s, so it was a mandate to do this work. It had some no-brainer components to it, right? It creates about 500 jobs to build. It leaves around about 100 jobs in just general maintenance, so that was a no-brainer. And what we learned from COVID is people needed places to convene safely and also to be apart safely. So this and our brand sort of brought that home. That generated about $160 million, 110 or 12 of that went to the downtown project because we were still, and we are today, still proving this concept, if you can believe that to be true, indiscriminate of the facts I just regurgitated to you. So it's a wheel, right? So that's half of it. The other two parts of the half. One is a revitalized foundation. So their job is to connect private dollars with public dollars, which they've been doing at an astounding rate. And the other part is state and federal dollars. So this project connects 6 of our most challenged neighborhoods, candidly, and revitalizes an overwhelming amount of deferred maintenance. So that is a bipartisan component of this that has been and proven to be successful, certainly on the federal level. On the state level, we don't do as well as Cleveland does, not to just congratulate my partners in the room, but you guys are light years ahead of us about talking about your projects as a region and why they're important and why they're prioritized and what they mean for all of you. I don't know that we've always been that good at that in Toledo, Ohio, although we are aspiring to do better based on community meetings. So that's the other part of our conversation. There's a community part of it. It is about swing sets and things of that variety, but there's a community part of it saying, it's not you this time, it's me, and it's me and the rest of us because this project works together. We have giant projects that are blocks apart that used to cut each other's throats. But we are a different town now because we have to be, not necessarily because of our genius.
I think there's 2 things I want to touch on there. One is the sort of unanimous consent here. There's no silver bullet for all of this. There's no one creative tax use, one federal grant, one state grant, one city fund that's going to solve for all of this. It's a complicated series of capital stacks over long periods of time that are really difficult to put together. And the second thing I want to highlight, I think it's important to take a step back here because we're all talking about crazy big numbers. 800 million, 500 million, like these numbers, when you think about public subsidies, seem very, very large. And it's important to talk about why it's important for that as well. And I think we've all talked about this collectively over the last day or so, but why do we do this work of revitalizing our waterfronts? It's to take care of the people who are here, obviously, and make this a great place to live, a great place to grow a family. It's also to grow our community. In a city like Cleveland or Toledo, sure, a lot of our challenges are downstream of a stagnating tax base. And when we think about the ways to grow our tax base, so we can take care of our people and provide better education and services and fix our potholes, we need to be thinking about how we get more people in the city. And when I think about ways to attract college students to stay in Cleveland or move back to Cleveland after they graduate, or ways to entice companies to relocate here so we have jobs in our CBD, I think about transforming our lakefront and transforming our riverfront and making this a really phenomenal, fantastic place to live with terrific public amenities and great sources of private investment. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we toss out all these big numbers and just exactly why they're so important.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the benefits of what we're hoping to see here in Cleveland. I'm curious, from the work you all have done, what benefits does improving access to the waterfront bring to your communities as well?
Yeah, in Seattle, so as part of our waterfront redevelopment, the other very important component that we did was we have multiple projects to reconnect our downtown and surrounding communities and neighborhoods to the waterfront. So again, like we have similar topography as what Cleveland's dealing with, and one of our crown jewel projects was a land bridge that connected our historic Pike Place Market intuitively and with a great experience as you travel on the bridge and spend time down to the waterfront. There's 2 stairways and also elevators to make that connection. Before that time, it was really hard to get to the waterfront. It was a maze, and when I first moved to Seattle, it took about 2 weeks before I even figured out how to get down there. Overall, we built 3 pedestrian bridges along the waterfront to help with the connectivity, and also did street improvements on surface streets to about 7 to 9 streets, about 26 blocks of those improvements. And it really helps revitalize the waterfront to bring the regional folks and the workforce that's downtown, to make it a pleasant journey to get to the waterfront, and then when you get there, having this fabulous experience to linger and stroll and spend time.
I would just say that, I mean, there are many obvious reasons why almost every city is built on a body of water. And one of the most important ones that I think we perhaps lost sight of over the last century was that people really just love being by the water. Right. It is relaxing, it is pleasant, it can be refreshing if you're willing to take a dip, depending on the quality of your water, depending on the day for Pittsburgh. It's our job to make those spaces accessible. It's the value proposition is already there. We can also talk, of course, about the economic development value and the dollars that you get back for the $500 million you put in. But really, these are sort of spaces that people want to be at and have a right to be at, and it's really as simple as getting them there, at least in my view.
Yeah, our city was created as a result of the river, and then it became the divider of 2 parts of our town. So it was the downtown, it was the east side. So this project, at minimum, connects that. And also, as opposed to thinking of our downtown as a 4-block radius, if you can imagine, which is what we call our downtown, it is what we decide of it and what we decide of it tomorrow. So I already made mention of the 6 neighborhoods that it connects, but we joked a bit about bathrooms, right? But if you're in need of a bathroom and there isn't one, all of a sudden becomes, like Mecca. So that's important. But the trail connection, and to Gavin's point, our early case studies that looked at many of these cities were for every $1 of economic development, or every $1 public money placed along a riverfront, it was somewhere, or a waterfront, somewhere between a $7 and $20 return. We are just started, like I said, but that extrapolation budgeted us to see about $1 billion worth of economic development, and that's an extraordinary figure for Toledo, Ohio. But again, we're not even halfway done, and we've seen $400 million worth of development in a downtown space. The other byproduct of the downtown master plan that created this conceptually was that we need about 10,000 residents downtown to make this cook, right? We have an aged housing stock. We don't have that availability today, but this green space brings private investment, and we're on the doorstep of putting 1,000 units downtown for market rate apartments, which would have been unheard of 20 years ago. If I would have told that to a group the size of Toledoans, I would have been laughed out of the room. But we're there, and it was a park that made it true. It was thinking about things differently that made it true. And we're proud to say that what you've experienced in somewhat larger cities is happening in Toledo.
Yeah, I mean, I think public space as a catalyst for private investment is not something we talk about enough with here as well. Like, public space is good on its own, full stop. Like, public space is great to have on our waterfronts and throughout our cities. But, I mean, I'll use Cleveland examples since everyone here knows that. You think about after Edgewater was built, how that catalyzed Gordon Square and Detroit Shoreway. You think all the work that's been done on the Scranton Peninsula after the Towpath Trail went in and Irishtown Bend was starting to move forward. Those are all really important public spaces on their own. They also, to Gavin's point, public space and waterfront space are where people want to spend time. It's pleasant, it's great to spend time there, and more than just a means of transport, like the Towpath Trail is or like the bridges in Seattle are, they become features unto themselves that drive all of the private investment that we want to see in this region also.
We are coming up on time for audience Q&A, but Scott, I can't not ask you about Brown Stadium. Sorry, this little thing, you may have heard of it, no big deal. But we do have now this settlement, the $100 million from the settlement. So I want to ask you, is there a sense for how that money might impact the North Coast project and what the stadium might be able to become once it's sort of taken care of?
Sure. So in terms of what the stadium can become, like I mentioned earlier, we are in the process of evaluating development partners. Before I was even in this role, the city did years of community engagement and community feedback, and we have 5,000 plus survey responses, hundreds of community meetings, a lot of data that still informs this new effort that we're going to have to plan our waterfront. So it's not like we're starting from scratch. In terms of what the settlement does and can do for the lakefront, a couple thoughts. One, without a stadium on the site, which is an anchor and is 25 acres of a 50-acre site, this is a much more complicated development project. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it's a much more complicated development project. And what helps ease that complication is this settlement offer. Public spaces don't pay for themselves. Infrastructure doesn't always pay for itself. And we are in a market where we cannot necessarily rely on private development partners to invest tens of millions of dollars into infrastructure as part of their project. So to be specific, because I know there's a lot of information out there, it's a $100 million settlement. 20 million of that goes to community benefits. Estimated about $30 million in value is the Haslam Sports Group demolishing their stadium and creating a pad-ready site, which is very, very important as well from a development perspective. And then it is $50 million over time tagged for lakefront development work. What that allows us to do is move the project forward in a way that we would not be able to otherwise. It is, just to be clear, it is absolutely critical to us being able to move this project forward. It allows us to do three things, or three buckets of things, I'll put it that way. One, public space. Again, the North Coast Yard showed us that people want to be on our downtown lakefront. With resources like this, we are able to start building out public space in short order. Which is really critical to continuing to attract private investment and continuing to sort of shift the mindset of Clevelanders that this is something that is actually happening. There is an earned healthy skepticism amongst a lot of people that lakefront development will actually never happen. Showing progress and making progress, is more importantly, is something that can shift that mindset and shift that narrative. Two, I mentioned infrastructure. There are infrastructure needs on that site. When you think about a 50-acre site, you're thinking about a new street grid. You're thinking about a lot of things that you wouldn't need if it were solely a 25-acre site. That comes at a cost. And third, we need to plan. We need to do engineering work for what this site could look like without a stadium. That also costs resources. And the city invested some money into North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation and a lot of time and resources to all the other facets of the project. But without additional resources coming in, the project would slow dramatically. This allows us to keep moving and to actually execute on all the things that we want to do in short order. So really critically important piece to the project, obviously has taken up oxygen for the last 12 to 18 months because it is an important conversation that we're having. And we are full steam ahead on this project, full steam ahead on transforming our lakefront, and the settlement is a critical piece to that.
And I do want to quickly ask, before we head into Q&A, what are some hurdles that you all have run into? I'm sure we can go on for hours about that alone, but what are some challenges you faced, and what should Cleveland maybe be prepared to deal with as we continue this work?
Just quickly, I think we mentioned most of the hurdles, but if you build it, they will come is from a movie. It's actually not usually true for human beings, but if you build it based on what people say they want and invite them over and over and over and over again, that's how you get a genesis of activation and support and start knocking down some of your skeptics or slaying whatever your dragons are here. So that is the tried and true statement. We had 20 public meetings for 30 acres and everyone wanted a swimming pool. We don't do swimming, but we're certainly responsible for everyone that said they wanted a swimming pool. So we built a giant splash pad that's an exact replica of the Maumee watershed so we can teach kids where their water comes from. And then we invited every kid almost door to door, printing out flyers. So we are cutting down trees at an enormous rate also. But that is how it works. That's the mechanism, man. We don't care how people get outside. We just want them to get outside and stay there.
Yeah, I feel like the largest hurdle in Seattle was getting to the decision to remove the Alaskan Way Viaduct. And that was about an 8 to 9 year process between our city officials, state, county, and the Port of Seattle. So after 8 or 9 years, the right decision was made to remove that barrier and rebuild the waterfront. But I totally agree. Like once you have that decision and your funding in place, keep that momentum going. Like just keep driving that process. Show some early wins. What Seattle did was, before the viaduct came down, we did do an expansion to the Pike Place Market, and it had a balcony deck plaza off of it where we were going to tie in our land bridge to overlook walk to it. So the community could stand there and still see this double-decker viaduct roaring below them. And just, we had informational and educational information there. So people could see the vision of what's to come. And that was really successful, and just keep it going, like driving the process.
I would say a hurdle that I encourage you to establish up front is tackling the hurdle of maintenance funding. So making sure that is built in from the outset. That has hurt projects and trust in project delivery in previous efforts because we didn't think about that from the outset. And so making sure that you do that little bit of extra work to ensure a lasting project is really important.
Thank you, appreciate it. So we're going to begin the audience Q&A. For our live stream audience, I'm Zaria Johnson, reporter and producer at IdeaStream Public Media and moderator for today's conversation. We are joined by leadership from across the nation from inaugural Kathryn J. Lincoln Forum in partnership with the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. We are discussing best practices for waterfront development. Here with me is Matthew Killam, Chief External Relations Officer of Metro Parks Toledo, Barbara Lee, Project Delivery Manager of Waterfront Seattle, Scott Skinner, Executive Director of the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation here in Cleveland, and Gavin White, Director of Planning and Projects of Riverlife Pittsburgh. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, and those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org. If you'd like to text the question, please text it to 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the program. May we have the first question?
Yes, we're going to begin with a text question that was sent. This is specifically for Barbara, but I think others might be able to interpret it as well. Can you speak to some of the work Waterfront Seattle does in terms of being good stewards of the water and waterfront? Is there a stance you take that is less, say, extractive of the waterfront and more reciprocal? For example, what programming or strategies has your work included to give back and take care of the waterfront in exchange for the assets it provides?
Sure, thank you for the question. One of the first things that we did was rebuild the seawall. And as part of that process, it was to bring back the ecosystem, because the seawall before forced the salmon is very important in Seattle. So it forced the juvenile salmon out into the deep waters to find food, but where there are obviously more predators. So that was really important when we reconstructed a seawall, and it was designed in a way to create the salmon highway. We put in habitat benches and created a near-shore environment by using a cantilevered sidewalk with glass panels that would let the light through. So that was an enormous success of ecology and sustainability.
Question?
Oh, hello. Ken Kalinchuk from PMC. Thanks for coming to visit us today. It's easy to dream about the vibrancy of the lakefront during our gorgeous summers, but we also have long winters in Cleveland. What do your cities and waterfronts do to maintain vibrancy in the winter months?
You can just call me, Ken.
I was going to say, move to Toledo, it's always nice.
It's not for you, Scott.
Anyone want to take that one?
Sure, I mean, I can start. We have the same climate, right, in Toledo, so, I mean, it was our promise to not only make this a world-class park, but have it be a year-round destination. So stealing from Chicago, Illinois, who has a similar climate, to build the ice skating ribbon, we've had over 100,000 just kids skating down there already. We have sledding activities. So not only do we have activities that are pay for play, but we make sure that everyone can participate in them. I already gave you a little bit of the demographics of the areas that surround this park. So we boast again about having a park within 5 miles of every Lucas County resident, but what's the upside if the park's built and you can't participate in any of the stuff, right? So of the 2 million visits we've seen in the downtown park in a relative short order, I'm proud to say that about 18% of that figure is from across the street, right? And that is something we're extremely proud of. We purchase cell phone data, so for those of you that are terrified that Big Brother is watching, he is, and he looks like this, so good luck sleeping with that. So that also informs how we activate that downtown area, right? It is important to us. It was a ghost town historically because there was nothing to do. So we ask other cities what they're doing and drive attendance in that fashion.
Yeah, we talked about this a bit yesterday, but you're never going to get as many people out in January as you are in July, in our cities at least. But there are things that people like to do in the winter, right? Holiday shopping, ice skating and sledding. There are activities that people will intentionally go out in the snow for, and you can ensure that people attend your spaces by making sure those activities are available.
I think it was mentioned earlier, but just to talk about the lakefront site, just because you build it does not mean people will come. And I think regardless of the season, activation, programming will continue to be a critical piece of this. Even once this land bridge is constructed and once the site becomes more part of the city grid with the shoreway realignment, this is still a destination site. It's not necessarily a location that folks are going to stumble on a regular basis. So regardless of seasonality, I think the answer is programming, activation, giving people a reason to go down there.
Right.
I think what we've discovered, over summer programming is that any small level of programming that can be like an activity for parents on a weekend with their kids does extraordinarily well. And I think that will continue as we flesh out both summer and winter programming ideas too.
Well, Seattle doesn't have the cold or snowy winters, but we did just enter the season of overcast gray skies and rain, and that lasts into April, May, probably June as well. Obviously, yes, the programming, we went through our peak programming, but also we do still do program throughout the off season, kind of some special events. There's a upcoming Halloween event coming in. I think it's also important to think through the space with design. One of the important things on the Seattle waterfront that our landscape architect noticed as they were touring our downtown and neighborhoods, there is not a lot of park space or green space in our downtown Seattle. I was blown away by the mall, the big green spaces that Cleveland has. Well, Seattle didn't have that, so that was very important in our redevelopment to provide that lush green space. We put in over 1,000 trees, almost 200,000 understory plants, shrubs, bulbs, and our gardens are heavily curated to perform seasonally. So even when it's off season, not as many tourists, at least for the locals, it's still a point of interest and an attraction.
So it's very exciting, all this development around connecting the downtown to the lakefront. But I wonder about what thought is going into and what plans are being made to restore the connections of the east side neighborhoods to the lakefront that were cut off with the installation of I-90 many years ago. And how do you engage the less affluent communities in the city of Cleveland to allow them that access to the lakefront?
Yeah, it's a really good question and something that we think about on a very regular basis. The downtown lakefront itself historically has served working class folks in Cleveland. It was a location for people coming in off of ships, shoremen who were working class and wanted to eat at a restaurant or wanted to do something different. As we think about the broader North Coast Connector project, there's a couple things here. The broader North Coast Connector project, one of the things that is not funded yet, but we are still working towards and designing towards, is extending the realignment of the shoreway to about East 18th. That includes a ramp to solve for the topography, getting you from East 18th up into Midtown St. Clair Superior. And when you think about, we're going to get real fun here, guys. You think about traffic distribution, right? And you have sort of off ramps or exits at East 18th, East 9th, and West 3rd. you're going to use a different one for wherever you're going in downtown. And I think there's a lot of interesting opportunity for some of the underutilized buildings in Midtown, in St. Clair Superior, as we're increasing traffic flow through and to those neighborhoods in order to get to CSU, Playhouse Square, and those neighborhoods specifically. There obviously needs to be a lot of thought and continued work done on how to counter against displacement, on how to revitalize and lift up those communities along with it, but that is a piece of the design. And then I'll add in, because it has been in the news for the last 2 weeks, the progress that's being made on Burke, which extends to East 55th, essentially, and connects into a lot of other great waterfront projects that our partners at Metro Parks are doing as well. That creates a lot of additional opportunity to get folks from those neighborhoods down to the waterfront. So that's a couple answers for you. In addition, it's really a lot of it is about partnerships as well, right? So over the summer, we worked with a group called P-League, who's an Eastside basketball organization, Rollin' Buckeyes, roller skating organization, and a number of others. And we found, I mean, we have data on this. We had 160-something different zip codes, including everyone in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, coming down to the site over the summer because we are using these place-based partners and working with these place-based partners, providing them with free space, which is really difficult to find, and they are bringing their communities with them to experience this lakefront. So that, I think, is a really important piece of this, in addition to ensuring that a large amount of this development will continue to be public space and will continue to be active public space, that we will still work with those partners to bring folks down to the community.
Thank you for that question.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lucy Cooley. I grew up in Seattle.
Oh, great.
And the waterfront was very well developed, even though that Alaskan thing, whatever they called it, was. There was the Ye Olde Curiosity Shop, there's an aquarium, there's a ferry terminal, there is a hotel. So it was kind of a natural no-brainer to have an earthquake create this wonderful opportunity. And here, we just have 50 acres in a very windy, cold, a lot of the time, area. And Cleveland's also very spread out. We seem to, every time we make a mall, it seems that another mall pops up 10 miles farther out. And I'm just curious what the plans are in terms of, Seattle has a cool park that goes over our freeway. It's called a lid. It has waterfalls, and it makes the freeway quieter. And I'm just wondering, are we thinking about trying to improve Dead Man's Curve? Are we talking about spreading out, taking away Burke, and sustainability? Are we thinking of windmills, solar power, et cetera? The Cuyahoga River is also being developed very nicely. It's less windy. I'm throwing a lot of stuff out here, but now I'll sit down.
Thank you. I think that was mostly geared towards me. I'll try to hit on a couple of them. The first is, I think you're right. This is more than just a 50-acre site. This is a mindset transformation. I think we get caught sometimes because of the drama of this specific site in the last 18 months that lakefront transformation is more than one piece of real estate. And as we think about our broader regional lakefront, when you ask regular Clevelanders who we do community block club meetings with, and frankly, it's people who are not generally coming to city club events on a fairly regular basis, there's no distinction between the individual lakefront projects. It's not like this is the North Coast and downtown, here is the Cheers project, here is Edgewater. It's our lakefront more broadly. So I think to sort of dance around your question, part of how we're thinking about this is working with all of our partners to ensure that there's different experiences on different parts of the lakefront that can touch on a lot of those different experiences that people want to have. In terms of if we're thinking about sustainability, development going on the riverfront, yes, there is a lot of really exciting stuff happening in Cleveland right now. And I think we sometimes can fall into the trap of thinking that it's too much, or that it's this, or that it's that. I'm going to plagiarize someone in this room here, but if we continue to fight over who gets the biggest piece of a shrinking pie, we're in a lot of trouble. And I think as we're thinking about the transformation of our lakefront and sort of sustainability, growth, all of those things, we need to be taking more of a yes and approach. And to your question directly, with potential future opportunities on Burke, we can continue to see more momentum. As you look further east, further west, this is a 100-year transformation. This is not something that my organization, that this city administration is going to resolve entirely when we think about using Lake Erie as the asset that it should be. But we're working on a piece of it right now. And hopefully, and our goal is that leads to someone else or future versions of us working on another piece of it and continuing to build on it. I think we'd love to hear your perspective, Barbara. The Seattle waterfront was not developed overnight. It took a very long time for them to get where they are now. We're just a little earlier in the game.
Yeah, it did take us a long time, about 15 plus years. Speaking to the Seattle waterfront, yeah, it was already an established, developed waterfront with commerce and a lot of different uses. It is and still is a working waterfront. And throughout the process, it was working with that palette and working to stay honest with Seattle and what was there. It's a working waterfront. It's a freight route. We have established businesses and piers. There's a ferry terminal. The Port of Seattle is there with the cruise ship terminal as well as a cargo terminal. There's railroad. But at the same time, it's very car-centric. It served vehicles, but we did still need to maintain those uses. So it was finding that right blend and striking that balance and creating really a waterfront for all, because it wasn't really a waterfront for all, and we didn't connect in our communities well because of that viaduct was in place. I think obviously each city has its unique culture and industry, and obviously the context of the waterfront or lakeshore is very different. But I think the big picture is to stay honest to your city and to respect the history and culture, but also to respect what's there and existing while you're designing for the future needs.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more, so please.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you compare notes of the different projects over time, have you in your discussions come across or developed kind of a set of common criteria for measuring the tangible benefits that you bring? We hear a lot of economic development, they're kind of abstract. Do you have ways that you can objectify that more specifically?
That's a good question.
So we talked about it.
Sure. We set Project Givens, birthed from the downtown master plan. So on top of revitalizing or creating 300 acres of green space, the economic development box we've checked, we wanted to create space or push the 10,000 resident push for downtown, hope to land more destination locations for commerce in that area. And I guess the reverse of it too is make sure that we didn't create gentrification within those 6 neighborhoods. So whenever we start a project, if it's a park design or even finding a restaurateur, if you will, we set those givens and don't break them. But those were sort of our metrics for that downtown space. The 300 acres, we knew we needed that to compete with all of you, candidly. We wanted to connect those 6 neighborhoods and make sure that a kid could ride his bike in or someone could walk into work. But those are sort of the metrics that we followed.
Yeah, I think there are a number of at least standardized, if not 100% agreed upon measures for determining economic impact, and that comes through property value increase, it comes through additional tax revenue, jobs created through construction, and then through operation of these spaces. So we do that work to make sure that we're convincing funders and federal applicant reviewers of the value of our project. I also want to make sure that we don't lose sight of those intangibles, right? Because those for us at the end of the day are what really make these spaces shine. It's the kid who comes down and gets to enjoy the watershed spray pad and then becomes an environmental scientist 20 years down the line, right?
I think the back end, important part of your question though, is since these are long projects, setting in when you benchmark yourself, right? I mean, our trophies do gather dust, like I said, or those statistics are just the immediate return. Our peers took 20 years to finish off their riverfront project. So what's your check-in that's registering that you're doing well? It's not just following trends like pickleball or a splash pad or things of that variety. They don't have a value, right? But 5 years from now, what are those metrics? Are they the same? So we've built that into our long-term plan to ask ourselves the question, is this still right? Does this feel right? Is Toledo the same city it was when we were here 5 years ago, based on administrative changes or cultural changes or what have you? So the back end of that, I think a system of check-ins are just as important as the preemptive work done, to be honest, sir. And we found already that we've made some mistakes. Not as much as these guys.
We're built.
That's an excellent point. Yes, I shouldn't have teed that way. You're absolutely right.
I think we have time for one more, please, go ahead.
Robin Minter, Smyers City Club member. You just alluded to mistakes, and that's what I'm interested in hearing about. What would you do differently in terms of governance, planning, design, programming? What can you help us avoid here in Cleveland?
So we would have allowed for one less question. We would have dialed in the partnerships on paper beforehand, right? So success has many parents and failure is an orphan, and it's very easy to chase the next shiny thing. So where is the development that's helping the little park system, the little engine that could, right? Who is now owning activation, things of that variety. So before the first swing set is put in or piece of dirt is moved, I wish that we would have dialed in a contract or a new manner of speaking that held people accountable to their part of what that downtown master plan did. Again, that sounds overtly critical or critical, and I don't mean it to be so, but when the bill comes, then it's an empty room sometimes. And I think we've experienced that a little bit, although we're not where we are without those same partnerships too. So holding each other accountable in that way on paper, as opposed to the Midwestern, all right, buddy, I'm sure it'll be fine, right? So.
Yeah, I would say just making sure that if you've got the chance to convince the powers that be that the least sexy stuff is probably the most important, right, including the contracts, particularly for maintenance and operations right, after the fact as well. But bathrooms, they're not sexy, but
seawall,
except Seattle's, you should check it out. They're really essential, and they get people to stay and really enjoy these spaces.
Yeah, I think the hardest part obviously is not the sexy stuff, it's behind the scenes. Like I already said, it took our decision makers 9 years to get to that decision. I'm not sure if there was a way to speed that along, but that decision did happen. I think one of the things we learned is more in the contracting. We put out a contract with like 1,400 days, and then we encountered the pandemic, and then we encountered a concrete strike. So if there was a way to build in a little bit more flexibility in our contracting process, and some of the amenities also came late in design. The restroom came a little bit later as, we really need to build this. And it evolved to something else. Like we did have it in our design, but it was more like those fancy porta potty, self-cleaning bathrooms, but it came pretty evident that that's not really going to work. And as you've alluded to, we have a very nice restroom that has a full-time concierge to keep it safe and clean, fresh cut flowers and music. So
it is very sexy.
It is a highlight of our waterfront.
Yeah. Thank you. Last thing I'll say, just having spent a couple days with these folks, these are long-term projects, and the biggest lesson I've learned so far is sustained senses of urgency, continuing to push and push and push over decades.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Now that you have heard what the mistakes are, you don't get to make any.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much to Matthew, Barbara, Scott, and Gavin, and Zaria. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I'm Dan Malthrop, Chief Executive here. Thanks also to Land Studio for their partnership in today's program. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like all of you. You can learn more about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. Forums like this one in particular, though, are made possible by the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. Today's forum is the inaugural Kathryn J. Lincoln Forum, which we present in partnership with the Institute. That's a nonprofit working to improve quality of life through effective land use, taxation, and stewardship of land. Our forum is named in honor of the Lincoln Institute Board Chair, Kathryn J. Lincoln. Thank you so much, Kathryn. Thanks to the Lincoln Institute Board and past board members as well. Please join me in thanking them. We would also like to welcome guests at tables hosted by the City of Cleveland, Cleveland Metro Parks, DiGeronimo Companies, Land Studio, and the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation, the Lincoln Series Advisory Committee, Mansard Gavin LPA, OMTA, and Project Management Consultants. Thank you all for your support and for being here today. Coming up this Friday, October 31st, it's our 2025 annual meeting featuring a forum with David Greenberg. He's the biographer of John Lewis, A Life, that will be moderated by Robin Minter-Smyers, City Club member who asked the last question. Then on Friday, November 7th, we'll be joined by Tiffany Cashin at Case Western Reserve University's Think Box, Kate Fox-Nagel with Metro Health, Tiffany Scruggs at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank to uncover how we can break barriers and build futures in entrepreneurship. That forum will be moderated by Tri-C's Renee Richard. That's all. That's what we got. Thanks so much for being a part of this, everybody. Our forum is adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.